Welcome to Late Night Creations. I'm so glad that you clicked on this video. Today I have a compilation video full of bird and bunny DIYs. They are from former videos. I hope that if this is your first time seeing them, you enjoy them as much as I enjoyed making them. As a reminder, this is a compilation video. These videos are from previous DIY content, so the original voiceovers may be outdated. There's no giveaways or playlists or challenges in this particular video. So sit back and enjoy, and we're going to start with the bird DIYs. Now let's use this little tin bird. I've had these in my stash for a while. I used to go to Dollar Tree, and if you bought one, you might as well buy 5, so I had those in my stash. Now I have this old fencing, and I just love it. I love that knot hole, but that one you could see was really hanging on by a thread, but I just love that. So what we're going to do is we're going to flip it over to the back, on the back side, and I had these pieces of an paint stir stick that I had cut off, and we're going to make use of them. We're going to put them on the back as stabilizers. Now I'm using Gravel Road by DIY Paint. I get all my DIY paints from Sammy over at unicorndustdesigns.com. So if you're interested in any IOD products or DIY paints or thrifted items, she has a beautiful website, so go check her out. And I just dry brushed it with some weathered wood just to, so you know, it doesn't really match the wood, but it looks like it was intended to be on there. So now I'm going to get out my heavy duty staple gun. This one has 1/2-inch staples in it, and I'm just going to staple these down, and it's going to hold it nice and secure. And I put a bunch of staples in there because I don't want this thing falling apart. I also am keeping this for myself because when I got finished with this, I was in love with it. This may or may not be my favorite one for today. I'm not sure why. Oh, that one didn't go all the way in, so I tried to pull it out, and the staple broke, so I just hammered it in. Okay, here we go. Watch this. Push it down. When I raise it up, the staples fall out, and the whole thing just fell apart on me. So I had to take time out, fix it, and continue on. So now this thing is sturdy, and it is so cute. Now let's work on this little bird. Little birdie. It is so wonky. But I took Prom Queen by DIY, which is a beautiful dusty powder blue. And again, I'm going to use that dauber and sponge, and dab this blue on there. And I did 2 coats. I let one dry really good. I just do want to warn you that if you use a heat gun, that metal heats up. Ask me how I know. It gets hot. Yep, I touched it. Anyway, it's hot. Okay, so now it's all done, and I'm going to use that Gravel Road, that gray again, and a little fan brush, and I'm going to dry brush over the top parts that are raised because I thought that would just give it, you know, it would make it pop a little bit. It didn't give it as much color as I wanted because DIY paints dry lighter, so I went ahead and took just the dark wax that was left in my brush from my previous use and rubbed it around the edge and then just rubbed it over it a little bit. And then I'm going to take some sandpaper. I don't really think this step was necessary, but I did it anyway. I didn't know it wasn't necessary until after hindsight. Okay, but anyway, I scuffed it up a little bit because we're going to use the Iron Patina paint by Dixie Belle and that whole system that you know I love to get that rusty, crusty look. But I really believe that I could have just done this on top of the paint because I end up going over the part that I sanded and getting it on the paint. And then there's some places that I just went ahead right there. See right there? I didn't sand and I did it and it turned out great. So I'm gonna just put it where I think it should have natural rust or just wherever I want it. And then Yeah, I guess I'm showing you. Okay, so the second time, that was the second coat. So you get to let it dry and then put a second coat on. Now this is the, I believe this is the green. It doesn't make sense. The green turns rust and the blue turns green. But anyway, I'm going to use a Q-tip instead of spraying it. I'm going to use a Q-tip to apply it just to the rusted parts. And I'm putting quite a bit of that liquid on there. And then once I've gotten that, and I covered the entire part that I painted. And then once I did that, I sprayed the blue, which is the green patina, which doesn't make sense. I know, but I didn't create it. And I'm just dabbing it in a few little places. I'm not putting it on the whole thing. And then I'm going to get that heat gun, and it helps to kind of move those paints around and make it not look, it makes it look a little more organic. And so I'm just going to keep drying it till it's dry. When it's completely dry, I took it outside and sprayed it with that fixative to seal it. And then I'm taking an old piece of sheet music. This was a choral sheet music. I got a book off Whatnot to do this exact thing with. And I'm going to tear some strips. I'm not cutting anything. I don't even have any scissors in my hand, people. Okay, I'm going to rip some strips. I'm going to wad them up. I'm going to use some dark wax, and I'm just going to make it look like some aged little ripped up strips of paper. There we go. That's what I'm doing. And then now I'm laying it all out how I want it. So this is what I want it to look like. So I'm going to mark where I want those strips to be so I don't kind of lose track of it, because I don't want them to be too far under where that birdie's going to sit. I'm going to use this little fan brush that you can get from the DIY Struggle. Her website is thediystruggle.com. Now, this is, I put glue on the front side of the paper instead of the back side, which is okay because the front side's going to get Mod Podge as well. But we're going to put Mod Podge down, and then we're going to just decoupage this paper on. And I'm struggling here. Like, what am I doing? I feel left-handed all of a sudden. But just put a little bit of Mod Podge down, and then just a little bit on top. And I don't even care if there's wrinkles, because remember, I wadded it up. So we're just going to put it down now. Kind of getting my mojo now. Okay, there we go. And then all around the edges, I'm going to feather it out with this wonderful fan brush. And it's so good for decoupaging. I'm going to just feather that, what am I using? Mod Podge. Mod Podge. I'm going to feather it out so that you don't see any lines where it starts and stops. And this fan brush is perfect to do that with. So you're going to see me do that in just a little bit. See there? I'm fanning it. See it? See it? Right there. That's what I'm doing, because I don't want you to be able to tell that I did that. I'm tricking you. Okay, now I'm just going to rip the edges. I don't want it, I'm tearing it because I don't want to cut it or sand it, because I want it to be raw. Okay, here we go. Put a little extra Mod Podge all around the edges and make sure it's all nice and sealed so it doesn't come up. And then we're going to place our bird. Make sure I get my little blocks. I'm using some of those little tumbling tower blocks from the Dollar Tree so that we can elevate that bird. We want some dimension. So don't ask me why I did this way. So I put one block on the back of the bird with some of that super glue, fix-all glue from Dollar Tree. The other one I used the Type Bond and some super glue and some hot glue. And I put it on the board. Don't ask me why. I don't know why. So then I just did the opposite to attach. There we go. I don't know. It was probably late at night, because I am late night creations, right? And I probably wasn't even thinking straight. But guess what? It got on there, and it looks great, and it's stuck like Chuck. There we go. Okay, next we're going to work on the little spindles. I just took this coarse grit sandpaper on my little finger sander, and I just went to town on these babies, and I just sanded and sanded and sanded away at that paint. This had been a Jenny Lynn changing table, and I disassembled it, and someone had painted it white. It had been wood stained, and this paint was on there pretty darn good. And so I managed to get all of it off that I wanted, because I wanted to wanted it to look, you know, distressed. Then I've taken the sandy blonde paint and I'm just giving it, you know, like when you do a whitewash, but I'm doing a sandy blonde wash instead. So that just kind of looks dirty, like it's been outside. And that's what I want this project to look like. Because, you know, we've got the fence posts, we got the bird, we got the song paper that looks like, the music paper that looks like the bird. He just brought it in, found it and brought it in to make a nest, but there's no nest. Oh boy. I'm going to clear wax these so that that paint stays on there, and this is what they turned out like. Now, these already have holes in the top and the bottom of them because they were nailed in. So, perfect. I don't even have to drill holes in them. I'm just going to put those little eye hooks in. Each spindle is going to get an eye hook in the end of it, and then I'm going to measure, and I'm going to use my little punch tool, and I'm going to punch each mark where the spindles are going to be so that I can put the eye hooks in the bottom. I'm going to show you. I'm going to have to punch. I'm careful because I don't want to split that wood, because you remember how fragile it is? I'm going to call it fragile. Okay, so we're going to take the little eye hooks and we're just going to screw all 4 of them in the bottom of this. It's pretty easy peasy, lemon squeezy. And then I just took those little tweezers because they were handy and used them to help me just screw that in there. Because they're so tiny, it's hard for me to get my big bulky fingers around there. Okay, I have these little Scrabble tiles, and I was able to spell out the word sing praise. I probably used all the vowels I had, and I felt a little bit like Vanna White, putting all my letters up there. Okay, so I'm going to glue them down with the Tite Bond and the hot glue. I'm not going to show you every letter. You're welcome. We need all the watch time we can get on this video. I don't need you fast forwarding, so I'm not going to make you watch me do all that. So, Tite Bond, hot glue. Put them all down. I did not want them even. I wanted them to look like it was coming out of his mouth. Sing praise. And the words on the sheet music also said something about singing praise forever. So I thought that was fun. Okay, I have a little bit of some muslin cloth, and I'm just going to attach each one of these 4 little spindles to those hooks with this cloth, and I'm just going to knot it and leave the little excess hanging. So just pull. I'm going to use my little tweezers to help me because those little eye hooks are tiny. Now, I have some canvas drop cloth, I have some muslin cloth, and I have a little bit of that ticking cloth. I looked for some little cloth with some tiny floral. That's really what I wanted, but I did not have any in my stash, and I do not need to buy any more fabric. So we're just going with what I had in my stash. I'm going to use some threads that actually came off of these fabrics when I was ripping them, and we're just going to tie it in the center. And then look what I got on Whatnot. I got this little wooden box full of buttons. And I got this for like $2. So I picked this particular big brown wooden button to go in the center. And I'm going to sew it. I got a big, huge needle. You could hot glue it if you want. Do not have to. But I thought this was going to be a cute look. It is a cute look. And I'm going to just sew it, and I'm going to leave the ends, the 2 ends, instead of, you know, we usually have the ends behind and we hide them. Nope, not this time. We're going to leave them up on top, and I'm going to tie a tiny, tiny little bow and leave the tiny little bow on top of the button. And then we're just going to fluff and poke and pull. I did hot glue the bow down. Did not get that on camera. But here is how our little bird on the fence turned out. This adorable birdhouse came from Whatnot. I got this on Whatnot, and it's a handmade birdhouse. I just love handmade items. I'm going to take this raffia bow off because we are going to make this little birdhouse over. So we're just going to take that off, And we are going to paint the little roofs with Apothecary. Just the parts that are already green. Apothecary is a beautiful green color by DIY. I get all my DIY paints, my IOD products, Saltwash, all those wonderful products from Sammy over at www.unicorndustdesigns.com. So if you're interested in any of those products, or even if you're not, go over and check out her website. You won't be disappointed. I used a little bit of painter's tape because, you know, it's kind of hard to get it off of natural wood, your paint off natural wood when you mess up. I did have to use my little finger sander to sand off some paint that I accidentally got on there before I used the tape, so I decided to go ahead and use my little finger sander and get down in those little grooves and just give it a little bit more dimension. And then I just wiped it off with a baby wipe and got all the little dust off and cleaned it up, and it's looking pretty good. I got out the new IOD Sparrow's Nest mold. It's the new spring 2025 mold, and I'm just dusting it with some cornstarch. You need to dust it and then dust out the excess. And I'm using the DOS air dry clay. I'm just kind of warming it up in my hands and smushing it around. And then I'm just going to press it down in the mold firmly. Press it down, press it down, press it down. And then I'm using my thumb to push it all the way over that little micro edge that it has. And then I use this little putty knife. It's just a really cheap putty knife you wouldn't even use for putty to smooth it out. You can use an old credit card, an old gift card, or anything like that. And then just gently bend it. You can see what I'm doing here, and let gravity let it fall out, and look at the beautiful detail. Absolutely gorgeous. Now I'm just placing it and seeing where I want to place it and what else I might want. So I got out the primitive mold and made a few little sprigs of greenery. I think I may have even used a different mold for that other piece of greenery. Maybe it was on this one. I don't even remember, people. Let's just use all the molds we can and get all the different textures and whatever we want. You don't have to use the same mold for that project, whatever project you're working on. So look at all those pretty different greenery, because you know why? Birds they're not just using one kind of leaf or one kind of twig for their nest. They're going out and they're getting everything they can get their hands on to make their nests. Okay, so we're going to use the Type Bond Quick and Thick. I'm going to smear it all the way out to the edges, get it all out to the edges, and then make sure those edges get nice and pressed down very gently so we don't mess up our details. I did that for all of the pieces. Now I'm going to take Cake Batter and Queen Bee by DIY to paint our bird. I'm just mixing them. I put them on that piece of paper and I'm going back and forth, because I want some dimension in our little bird. I also think at some point I may have used some liquid sunshine, or I may have added a little bit of vintage linen. I'm not sure. I did use Aviary by DIY on the leaves. I did not capture that on camera. Thought I had pushed record, and I did not. I'm using weathered wood on the nest. Now, if I had this to do over again, my friends, I would have done this all one color and just waxed it, because this was a very, very tedious. But it turns out beautiful. Now I'm going to take the weathered wood and I'm going to dry brush over this green just a little bit. Not too heavy, just a little bit. We're going to outline it. We're going to just grunge it up just a little bit, not too terribly much. Just give it a little bit of dimension. It looked too flat and too clean to be a birdhouse, right? And then I took some, what is this? This is faded burlap. Thanks for telling me. I heard somebody out there holler it. And I'm going to dry brush over the bird's nest so you can see all those beautiful details of all those twigs that the birds gathered up and made this nest with. I also put some over the leaves. Oh, I did some weathered wood over the leaves to give it all that dimension. And I think it turned out beautiful. I'm going to take some clear wax by DIY, or maybe I used the one by Dixie Belle. I'm not quite sure. Anyway, you want to seal it. You want to seal your clay, you want to seal your paints, and that's what I did here. I sealed the whole thing. And now I'm going to take French millinery, and I'm going to just pat a little bit of it on this. I actually think I mixed another color with it. Did I use that straight? Anyway, I need to cover up this hole. And so I'm going to put some Spanish moss in there. Then we're going to put that little flower right up there. It wasn't big enough for the hole, so I decided we needed some Spanish moss, a tree house. This is not a tree house, folks. I'm sorry. This is a birdhouse. A birdhouse isn't a birdhouse without some Spanish moss, right? We're going to take some jute twine. We're going to just wrap it around, tie a bow, and voila. We are done. This bird was a thrifted item, and I loved her shape. I thought that she was just gorgeous, but she is not my color. So I decided to take her outside on that beautiful sunshiny day that we had and spray her with Rust-Oleum Serenity Blue because I absolutely love blue. Gave her one really good coat of spray paint and then brought her back into the craft cottage. I'm going to take my finger sander and I'm just going to sand back some of that so you can see a little bit of that, bronzy color that was underneath there. And she was a little rough. So she started looking like she had the pox or something, the measles or something. So I took that sandpaper and just kind of got serious about it. Then I decided she needed some little florals. So I got out the new Lost Garden transfer book from IOD. And these are a little bit different than their normal. These are very viney, very thorny, small little flowers, which are nice for projects like this one. I just needed some little greenery or some little florals that I could just kind of wrap around her. And this one, I think, turned out perfect. It's a little hard to do transfers on a curved, uneven surface. She's a little bumpy. She's a little lumpy. But you know what? I just kept working with it, and you saw how I split that clear sheet that it's on, the transfer sheet. I just clipped it. I didn't clip and cut the transfer, but I clipped just the sheet, so it was a little easier for it to lay down on this uneven surface. And you know, it really wasn't hard. It was a little awkward because I had to lay her on her side and try to hold her while I pressed firmly, but it worked out great, and it wasn't difficult. And you can see that it turns out beautiful. And it adhered perfectly. So I put 2 or 3 little pieces of that transfer on my little bird. And sometimes I name my little projects, especially if I think I'm going to keep them in my home. But I didn't give her a name. If y'all think she needs a name, y'all help me give her a name. What do you think that her name should be? I took some white wax by DIY, and I waxed her up good. I put a bunch of white wax on her, and then I let it sit for a while. And then I went, so not true. I started out waxing and wiping and waxing and wiping, and then too much of it was wiping back off because remember, this was spray paint, not chalk paint. So what I ended up doing was just putting a whole bunch of it on and letting it sit and almost like dry, and then it turned out like I wanted it to. Okay, for this project, we're going to use Shade and Song IOD stamp. It's the new 2025 spring collection, and I am in love with this stamp. Now, this was going to be a super easy project. My friend Susan gave me this book, and this little brooch, I don't know what that thing's called. it was a piece of resin pour that I had in my stash, and so I grabbed it because it was big enough to go over that little gate that's on this book. But my friend Susan gave me this book. I love the colors. I thought it was perfect for spring. I'm going to leave the spine. I'm not even going to change anything up. There were some pages missing, but that was okay. It added character to it. I'm just going to stamp it. I'm going to paint that resin piece, and it's going to be so easy. Oh, no, it was not easy. It was a fail. I thought, well, because the book had that slick texture, you know what I mean? It was an older book and it had that slick texture, and I thought, well, I'm just going to take some alcohol and I'm just going to wipe it off. If it won't stick to it and it won't do right, then it should just wipe right off. No, it did not. So here I go. I'm going to paint the book. I did not want to have to paint the book, but now I'm going to paint the book. So I took Farm Fresh, and I put it on the screen. Farm Fresh and Old 57, mostly Farm Fresh. And it mixed to the perfect color. So I put one thin coat. I didn't have to put a lot of paint because it covered good and it was the same color. And then I didn't paint all the way out to the edges, so it still had those rough, torn edges. That's what I liked about it. I like the character where the edges are torn, and I didn't want to paint over those and make it look new and fresh. So I was able to still maintain that. Okay, so I did that, and then I used faded burlap on the, I think it was faded burlap, pretty sure, faded burlap on the spine. I didn't paint the spine, on the other part that's the same color as the spine, where my fingers are right now. So I did tape it off because I wanted that nice crisp line, and I didn't trust myself. Yes, this is faded burlap, and it was the perfect color. Perfect color. And so it was not at all lost, but it just took me a little longer. You know, those projects that you go in and you go, oh, this is going to be an easy project. I'm just going to do this, I'm going to do that, and it's going to be boom, bam, thank you, ma'am. Nope. Those are always the ones that I should be leery of because they always take me twice as long. So I didn't get on camera stamping that huge tree, but I just stamped it up like we do all the stamps. Now I'm going to put this little bird and this little twig at the bottom, and I am going to successfully use my little, oh my goodness, I can't even think what they're called now. Give me just a second, but we're going to stamp this bird first. The masks. I'm going to use the masks. So I'm going to stamp it and then just wipe off any excess ink that gets on there. And I am using the gray ink by IOD and this little felt stamp presser. Oh my goodness. Thank you, Myra. My friend Myra from Farm Fresh Design 59 told me about this, and it is a game changer. Lift that stamp straight up and look how beautiful. Look at all those details. Okay, I'm going to dry it really, really good with my heat gun because I'm going to put this little mask on there. Because when I put that little twig, this little branch, I want it to go behind the feet so it looks like he's sitting on this branch, okay? And then there was another piece of the florals or green, whatever, leaves on it that, see, it goes up into the neck. But I don't want that on top of his neck. So it goes, going to look like it's behind him. Wait till you see it. If you've never seen this done, it is amazing. Look. Okay, but I didn't, now I'm going to just ink up a little bit of the stamp on the back side of it, and I'm going to make the branch go ahead and go to the left over there. Right there. See, you can just ink part of the stamp. You don't have to use the whole stamp, and we'll continue that branch further out. Look at that. Look at that. Okay, then there's some little blank spots, so I'm just going to, where there's still a little ink on there, I'm just going to dab it, okay? Dab it again, okay? And then over on the right, I thought, oh, here, there needs to be something coming in off the side of the page, so I stuck a little bit there. Now I'm going to take faded burlap, and we are going to paint this little frame. And then I decided to take some vintage linen and add just a little bit of petticoat pink to it, so it's a very, very pale pink. And I did a heavy, heavy dry brush. So I just want the top. I want to keep that faded burlap in the background. Then I took my little soft t-shirt and I buffed out the center because this is a sticker and I wanted it to stick well. And I'm taking my fingernail, you can take the end of a paintbrush, anything, and mark where you need to cut that. So I just cut this down to fit inside. Now it's smaller on the sides, but you'll see how I fix that shortly. And you might not like the way this looks, and that's fine. You could always use a stamp. You could always use some kind of ephemera that's bigger. But I really loved this girl, and she just looked like she should belong on this book. Because there's a girl's name on the spine, I don't know. I just thought you should do it. Okay, so I took the faded burlap and a brush that was kind of frayed on the edges, and I'm just pouncing it all around the edges. So it almost makes it look like the edges of that picture are frayed. Can you see? Can you tell? I don't know if you can tell on camera. But it makes it look like the picture is frayed around the edges versus, you know, it being too small. Now, we're going to take our Titebond Quick and Thick, and we're going to put it in the center. We're going to put our hot glue on the outside. I don't know. That's just the way I do things. You do you, boo. I'll do me. Okay. That kind of sounded sassy. I didn't mean that to be sassy. I'm sorry. Okay, but just look at this. And what I love is if you make a mistake and there's something ugly, we can just cover it up. Take it away, cover it up, and you never know it was there. That's what Jesus does with our sin. He doesn't cover it up. He washes it away, and it was never like it was never there. Okay, so look at this little bird. Look at this little bird. I got this on Whatnot for like $2. And I thought it was really cute, but I'm not really into that bright yellow. If you're into the bright yellow, I'm sorry. I'm gonna cover it up with crockery in the DIY cottage colors. You have to stir them really, really good when you get them. Now, I shook it, and I did a little dance when I shook it, but I shook it up really, really good. I also stirred it really, really good. Now, I did 2 coats of paint, and I used this really stiff brush because I needed to get down in all that texture. This thing had so much texture. This bird and that sunflower had so much texture. Now on the bottom and the back side of it is really slick. But this bird and that sunflower, there was so much texture. Okay, all one color, and then I'm going to take white wax. Same thing I did with the other bird. I decided, what did I do? I don't even know. I think I left a lot of the wax in there. I didn't wipe back too much of it because I liked the way it looked with a lot of that wax. See there? That is so pretty. This little bird turned out so gorgeous. You are going to love it. Look, I'm making a mess. I always mess. I'm a messy crafter. Leave in the comments below if you're a messy crafter. I am a mess. That's why I need Jesus. I talk about Jesus all the time because, y'all, I'm a mess. I'm a mess without him. I need him. I need him. I need him. Okay, so I'm just using this. It's actually an old stencil brush. It works great for waxes and the makeup brush. So I'm kind of a multi-tool crafter. Then I'm just going to take my little t-shirt and wipe off all the excess because, I put a bunch on there. And I don't want it all gloppy everywhere. So I did let it dry a little bit, but it didn't want to stick to that slick surface back there too much. But it did like to get down in those little nooks and crannies and look absolutely gorgeous. Then I decided it needed a little something extra. So I thought if you like a little rustic look, you could tie a little piece of twine right there. Tie a little bow, and that would be adorable. You could even put a little piece of burlap ribbon there. And I think it looks really good. Very neutral. Yes? Okay, but nope. You see that chiffon ribbon right there? I know you see my chiffon ribbon right there. And I thought even the green would look good. If you're a green is really, really hot this year. The color green, yes, it is. And look how cute that looks. You could cut it off. I'm not going to cut it. I'm going to save my ribbon. But you could cut it however short you want it. But I did blue because blue is my color. And look at it on the stack of blue books. It is so beautiful. get to crafting. Okay, on our first DIY, I got this bird at Savers in Kansas when I went to the For Love of Junk weekend back in September. I paid $3.99 for it, already took the tag off. It was a great deal. I'm just going to clean it up and get all the yucky, sticky stuff off. And then I'm going to use Hey Sailor by DIY paint, and I'm going to use a chippy brush, and I'm just going to pounce it on so I can get it all in those little crevices and details. And I'm going to do this all over the entire bird and even on the bottom. I'm going to use my heat tool so that I can dry it, so I can hold it on other parts, so I can get it all over. Then I'm going to take some Big Top Sealer by DIY, and I think I'm going to use this makeup brush because it will help spread it really evenly and get it all in the little nooks and crannies and crevices, but it didn't really work that great. So I ended up switching over to a regular paintbrush that actually worked a little bit better. So I gave it just a thin coat all over. It looks like I'm got a lot on there, but that little bit went a long way. And so, yeah, you can see I just squirted a little bit, and it really goes a long way. So I covered the entire thing, and I let it dry completely. And then I'm going to use my white wax. Now, I did this because I didn't want the white wax to be too much. So this keeps it from being too much. But it's perfect. So I'm taking the white wax and that makeup brush. I get them on Amazon. They're in my Amazon storefront link that's in the description box below. And I'm just wiping it on with this brush. I absolutely love these brushes. They are so good for multiple purposes. I use it for stencil brush. I use it to apply waxes. I absolutely love, love, love them. Now I'm using an old piece of a t-shirt just to wipe it back. It's my favorite method to wipe back the waxes. You can wipe as much back or as little back as you want. I really wanted that white wax just to be down in all the creases and the cracks, and you know, you can just see what I'm doing. And I'm not real sure why I decided to show you all of this, except maybe I decided I was going to talk a little bit in this video. But this is what I did. And the parts that were hard to get to, I just put a little bit of wax on the cloth and got it in there. And then at one point, I took a little toothpick and I put some wax on the toothpick and poked it in there. And then I put the toothpick in the t-shirt and buffed it out like that. And that is done. Let me know what you think about my beautiful bluebird for my bedroom that matches my bedroom decor. I don't have any video of our actual time in the thrift store, but this was the whole crew on the For Love of Junk weekend. We had a blast thrifting and making over our thrift finds. And this is where I purchased this little wooden watering can decor piece, either on Whatnot or at the thrift store. I cannot remember, but it is cute. And we're not going to do a whole lot to it, not going to paint it. I'm going to just use this beautiful piece of decoupage paper on it. And it's going to make it look 10 times better, 100 times better. I'm going to use that same method with the wet paintbrush to rip the edges of this, and going to rip the edges that we didn't even have to tear to the outside edges, because I want that ripped edge look. I like that. Now, when I put it on the watering can, I need it to go around that little handle part. So I'm just going to put it up there. I'm going to wet that part. I'm just going to rip it. It's going to look like it belongs on there. Look at that. Would ya look at that? And then we're going to use the same method. We're going to wet that decoupage paper. We're going to lay it on there. we're going to do the same thing. We're going to lay down some Mod Podge, smooth it out on top. Lay down some Mod Podge, smooth it out on top. And that decoupage paper is it's a little bit wet, so it's soaking this up. And this is a rough surface, so this decoupage paper is like going down in those little crevices of the wood, and it just, oh, it's so beautiful. I wish you could see it in person. It's so pretty. Okay, now this is a new mold from IOD. I'm using a little bit of cornstarch in it because we're going to use some DOS air dry clay. And I'm just going to squish it up in my hands, roll it around a little bit, get it nice and warm in my hands so it's nice and pliable. And then I'm just going to press it with my fingers and my thumbs and just kind of rub off the excess. I don't know what I did there, but whatever. And then just rub off the excess. And it has like a little micro edge, a little ledge, if you will. And it helps you be able to just kind of wipe it. When you wipe it off there, it just sort of stops. It's perfect. Then I have this little tool. I'm not sure where I got this little yellow tool. You can use an old gift card, an old credit card. It would work just as good. But this little tool works really nice. It's like an old putty knife or something too. But I like to use it to scrape over the edge to make the back of it smooth and level. And then it also gets rid of all the little crumbs on the edges. So this works really nice. Just one nice little swoop, and then we're going to turn it over, and you do not have to wait for this to dry in the mold. Turn it over, and well, I lost a little part of the branch, but no fear, that's okay. We'll just pull it out, and when we put it on our birdhouse, or this is not a birdhouse, this is a watering can, we'll just glue it to it. I'm going to use the Type Bond Quick and Thick in this little spatula and put it on there, glue it down, and then we're going to glue this little branch that broke off, and we'll just glue it right up there where it's supposed to be, and nobody will know unless you tell them that it was broken. We're just going to mash it in there. Now I have a bunch of different paint colors here. I have Cake Batter, I have Queen Bee, and I have Liquid Sunshine, all by DIY. And I'm just using a little bit of all of them on this bird. And then I'm using Weathered Wood for the twig, the branch. And it was really hard for me to get on camera painting it because my head would get in the way. But I also put a ribbon on the handle off camera, but this is how this little watering can turned out. Of course, we're going to start with some scrap wood, and I'm just showing you the measurements of this little piece of plank wood that I have, and in case you want to know what size we're working with. And these are just some of the ends of those awesome spindles I had that I cut off to use for other things. And these are just all in a big box in my shop. So I used my miter saw to cut them at this angle to make a frame. And I'm just showing you that you need to be sure that you're cutting the inside of your angle to your wood, because I've ruined many projects not doing that. Now my piece of the plank of wood was not cut perfectly, so my frame doesn't fit perfectly, but you'll see in the end that it works out just fine because we're going to decorate it up and you won't even notice that. So I'm just showing you here, I guess, how it all fits together. And it looks like there's a big gap in there, but there will not be a big gap when I position the pieces all together how they belong. Now I'm going to start with some White Swan by DIY, and painted one coat on there. I don't not need full coverage because we're going to use some Mod Podge, and we're going to Mod Podge a beautiful napkin with what else but birds on it. Now I'm putting one good solid coat on there, and I'm going to let it dry completely. And we're going to use the iron-on method. I got this beautiful napkin from my friend Myra over at Farm Fresh Designs 59. And if you do not know her, please go over and check out her channel. I will try to remember to leave it linked in the description box so you can find her easily. And she does amazing, beautiful home decor. She's also a good friend of mine, but she does beautiful work. You will love her. Now, I'm taking all the plies. Be sure you remove all the plies off of your napkin or it will not work. Now, I'm going to position it where I want it, and then I'm going to take my little mini heat press. You could use a household iron. Just do not use steam. You're going to press firmly, but not too firmly, and hold it over each area for, 5 to 10 seconds until it's adhered. And then you're going to just use some sandpaper or an X-Acto knife or something to take off your excess. I don't have to be real pedantic about this because we're going to put the frame around it. But I do take a little bit of DIY dark wax and just go around the edges because we want it to look a little bit vintage, a little bit old. It's going to have a bird nest on it, so we want it to look a little weathered. I'm also going to do this to the frame. I need to seal that paint anyway, so I'm going to use the dark wax around the edges mostly, and then I'm going to take my little scrap of a t-shirt, which is my favorite thing to use because it's lint-free, and I'm going to use it to move that wax around all over to seal that paint and to give it the finish and the look that I prefer. I'm going to do that to all 4 of these pieces. I don't show it because this video is already long enough without showing every single step. I did not put the wax on the pieces that I'm going to glue together on the corners. Now, I did my favorite method of gluing things together so that it stays and it's sturdy. I drilled some little holes and I took some little skewers and some little pieces of this skewer, I cut it to make sure that they all fit down in there before I glue. I'm going to show you here. I make sure that the skewer will go all the way into the hole. Now I'm going to take my Titebond Quick and Thick. I've been using it a while, so I'm having to shake it down. I do store it upside down so that the glue always stays down toward the tip, and I don't have to shake it too much. And then I'm going to put a little bit on those little skewers so that it gets all down in those holes. Now I'm going to press it down in there, make sure they line up good. Sometimes my skewers and my holes don't line up perfectly, and I have to maneuver it a little bit, but that's okay. They're going to stay in there good. This side I'm doing, but oops, I better put some glue on there so that on those corners so that they stay in place good. Now, I just use some painter's tape, you're going to see when I take it apart, to hold those together till they dry, and it dries really quickly. I picked up these little birds at Dollar Tree. They are super cute. They had that little flap for the wing, which I'm not sure is going to be really beneficial for me because I'm going to use the black side. I wanted to paint this little bird with mermaid tail and prom queen mixed to match one of the little birds in the napkin I'm showing you there. So I'm mixing these two. I mix these two colors together to get a custom color, and I'm just going to dab and pounce it on there to give it a little texture. And I'm kind of going back to my days of toll painting and blending, and I'm going to use a little bit of the mermaid tail by itself on the wing to give it a little bit of darker there, just give it some dimension, and a little bit of the prom queen up on her little head. And then I'm going to take the white swan and a little bit of cake batter and a little bit of, I want to say that's queen bee, but it looks a little brighter, so it could be liquid sunshine. Anyway, I'm going to use 3 yellows with the white, and I'm going to start out with the white, and I'm just going to dab it all over. And then I'm going to spray a little water on my mat, and I'm going to apply a little bit of water so that I can move the colors around a little bit because they dry real fast because it's, it's clay-based paint. And then I'm just going to use all those yellows and all those whites until I achieve the color I want, and I'm just dabbing it on. And then I'm going to go back with a little bit of the blue and soften that line a little bit. And just dab it with my finger a little bit, dab it with the brush, whatever I need to do to blend that line out a little bit. And I don't care if there's a line, but I just wanted to soften it a little bit. Dry it with my heat gun, And then I'm going to take white wax by DIY and my little t-shirt and just seal that paint in. And then dark wax with my makeup brush, which those are linked in my Amazon store in my description box. They are amazing for waxes, for stenciling, all kinds of crafting needs. And then a little twine bow to cover up that hole makes her look adorable. Okay, here you can see how I used the painter's tape to hold my project together until the paint dried, or the glue dried, and it worked wonderful. My clamps do not work when you're gluing corners together, and I had purchased some corner clamps, but they were way too small for this thick wood. Now, I'm going to get out the messy, what is this stuff called? Spanish moss. And you see that little piece of bark I put to the side? I'm going to use that shortly. I'm going to just spread it all out across the bottom. I'm going to do the work for the little bird since she's not real. And we're going to make a little nest in the corner for those precious little eggs up there. I purchased those little eggs after Christmas a couple years ago in different sizes. I think from Joann's Fabric, maybe Hobby Lobby. And I've just been using them a few at a time. Now I'm just going to glue the Spanish moss to the bottom of this frame and glue the little nest down, and then I'm going to use a little piece of a Jenga block that was just in my stash because I don't throw anything away, to raise the little bird up from the frame because I don't want her sitting way down on the frame. And there you can see I broke that little piece of bark up and I'm putting it in the nest because birds, they just put everything in their nest, whatever they need to make their nest comfy for their eggs. There's that little piece of Jenga block, and then I'm going to put her there to make it more dimensional. And then I found that little twig in my stash from a bag of twigs that came from Dollar Tree, but you could just go out in the yard or the park or wherever and just pick up twigs. And I'm going to put her on there, little Jenga block. Look how precious she is. She's going to be just protecting her little eggs, watching her little eggs so nobody messes with them. And then I'm going to dust off all the little crumbs and put this in my decor. Okay, so I save all the junk, and I have saved these milk containers. And I cut the half and half one in half because I didn't have a shorter one. And so I just took my X-Acto knife and cut it all the way around. And we're going to make a base for it. You see that little piece of cardboard next to it? I just cut that the size of the bottom of it. I cut all the little spouts off with an X-Acto knife. They're just plastic. They came off really easy. And guess what? We're going to save that for another day for another project. I'm going to take a fine grit sandpaper and I'm just going to sand off some of that wax. You know, there's that little waxy surface on there. I'm not going to do a whole lot, just a little bit. I'm going to take weathered wood and I'm going to give all of these one coat of weathered wood. It does not coat completely because I did not get all the wax off. I think that I show you a little bit about how the wax how it impedes the paint from adhering. You can see it repels a little bit there, but you're going to see when I put the second coat on how good it works. Now, I did both of those. Here they are, all with there. You can see that little piece where it didn't get. Okay, I'm going to use Cowgirl Coral, Apothecary, and I was going to use beadboard, but I ended up using a gray on all of these. I only show you the Cowgirl Coral, and I'm going to paint this entire carton with Cowgirl Coral, and I'm not giving it like a complete coat because I want them to look like, you know, they're birdhouses. Now I'm going to use my ruler to mark, and I'm going to make some little shiplap lines. And I'm going to use the weathered wood and a skinny little paintbrush and my metal ruler, and I'm just going to line it up. And I don't really care if they're completely straight. and I don't care if the lines are completely solid. I do this all the time for my shiplap. It's super easy, it's super quick, and it looks really good. So I'm just going to make those little lines like that. I'm going to do it all the way around the entire carton. I don't show you the whole process. I'm just going to show you one side. And then I take a 220 grit sanding block that's been used over and over and over, and I lightly, very lightly sand. Now these cartons are hollow, so we have to remember that. Remember that when I do a lot of other projects, okay? Okay, so now I'm going to take a very dry brush and just go over those lines and around the edges with this weathered wood as well. Now I'm going to attempt to take one of the barnwood planks by IOD on their stamps, and I do this on the back just in case I don't like it. And guess what? I really didn't like it. I don't know if it was the stamp I chose or it was just the nature of it. I tried to sand it down a little bit to see if I liked it better. I thought it would look a little bit more like wood, and I think it was maybe just the stamp I used. I decided just to leave it on the back and not go with it. I'm going to use these large craft sticks to put on the bottom of this to make a little porch on our birdhouse. And I cut them to size. I'm going to use some weathered wood and a wet wipe to stain it it'll look weathered. That's why it's called weathered wood. This is a DIY paint, and it works really, really well. This is my favorite one to make like a stain. I'm going to use the Fix-All gel adhesive that comes from Dollar Tree and some hot glue to adhere this, because it does have that waxy, finish. I'm trying to figure out where to put what glue on there. Okay, so I'm going to stick that down. I'm going to hold it down for a few seconds till that hot glue adheres, and then the other glue is going to, hold it down good. I'm going to put some painter's tape on to hold it down tight until it dries. And while that is happening, while that is drying, we'll work on another element, which is the roof. So I cut those to the size that I wanted them, and we're going to glue that down. Oops. Not sure why I took that off and decided I wanted to do something different. And you're going to see, I wanted to start in the middle. You're going to see me sometimes use the Tite Bond and sometimes just use the hot glue. No rhyme or reason to the things I do when I craft, remember? Okay, so I'm going to start in the middle and work my way out. Because if it hangs off the edge a little bit or doesn't go all the way to the edge a little bit, that's okay. But, we want it to be even. And we want to cover up that hole for sure. So I love the way this little roof turns out. And, it's rustic, and so they don't all have to be the same length or any of that stuff. Now, that was the back side. The front side, I used the end with the little scallop on it. So it'll match the porch. So I'm just going to glue all those down. And I did not glue anything across the top of it. Now, I used a little round bottle to trace a circle for the hole so the bird can go in. Now, if you don't want this to fall down inside your birdhouse, I suggest you hold it. I didn't care if it fell down in there. And then here is my bag of wooden goodies. And this is that bag of sticks from Dollar Tree. And I'm going to make a perch. I'm going to use one of those little wooden pieces to make a perch. Now, I've got the Apothecary labels from IOD. It's part of their new release. I'm absolutely in love with it. And I should not have put this on that hard acrylic block. I should have just put it on the, the plastic. Because, see, I had to take them off and use them because it's a hollow center. It's not hard behind it, but it worked out okay. So I got wise when I wanted to do the established 2024, and there we go. Then I'm going to, it needs to look like it's been lived in, so I'm going to take the sandpaper and sand over it a little bit. I did not weatherwood these before I put them on, so I'm going to do it now, and I'm also going to run that across the top of that. and I didn't put a piece of wood across the top of it because this was just the look I was going for. Now I'm going to take clear wax by DIY, and I'm going to wax this entire piece. I do this with all 3 of these birdhouses in case I don't get it on camera. I clear wax them all. Now I'm going to make the little hanger for the top. I don't put a hanger on all of them, but this one gets a little wire hanger. This is just some wire you can get at the hardware store, the hobby store, anywhere you can buy this stuff. And I'm just going to bend it and stick it in the top there, and it'll just stick in there and stay. I'm going to do that on both sides and pull it up there to the top, and it makes a cute little hanger. I might have made the hanger a little bit tall, but I think it looks cute. These are for decor purposes only. I'm not going to put this outside for a bird to nest in. However, you could if you really wanted to. Now we're going to just poke some Spanish moss here and there and everywhere in the eaves and where she's going to nest her little birds. For our next birdhouse, we need to make the base because we cut it off. Remember the one we cut shorter? So we're just going to measure them. We're going to cut these little craft sticks with some scissors. They cut really easy. We're going to measure them all the same length. With a pencil, cut them. Then we're going to glue them all with some quick and thick by Titebond onto that little piece of cardboard. Simple, quick, and easy. I'm not going to show you the whole process. I don't think I'm going to show you this whole process, surely. Okay. And then I actually just set a jar of paint on it and set it to the side. I did not show you that I painted this gray, but it was the same process as the other one. I just painted it with some gray paint that I had in my stash. And now I cut a little piece of sponge and I glued it to the end of a wooden dowel. This wooden dowel came off of an old paintbrush. Those old sponge brushes, I'd save those every time. I don't throw them away. And I just glued this onto the end of it, and I'm just doing a brick lay pattern with it. And I mixed carnival red and weathered wood to make this brick color. I think this turns out really cute. I did an entire wall like this one time. Okay, I glued a couple of these craft sticks in the bottom to have something for our base to sit on so that it would stick to it. And we're just going to stick that to it. There we go. I'm going to take the weathered wood because I forgot to paint them before I put it on. And this is easy. And then I kind of like it because then it kind of brings the color all together. It works out fine, right? And I'm going to do the sides right there. I'm going to paint the bottom. And yeah. And this got a coat of clear wax by DIY. I don't know if I showed you that. Now I'm going to use these little skinny craft sticks. I get them at Walmart, and I'm going to measure them out to the roof. We're going to put these on the roof, and I'm going to cut enough of them to fit all over the top. And I can't cut them with scissors. They were more difficult. I tried scissors. I tried the little, those little wire cutters you see, and my miter shears were the best. I am going to use weathered wood. I'm going to give them a very messy coat, like just a dry brush messy coat. And I'm going to do all of them, just the top. I don't even know if I did the sides. Whatever got on the sides, I believe. And now I'm going to put my glue down, and I'm going to use a little bit of hot glue and a little bit of the Titebond. And like I said, there's no rhyme or reason to why I do what I do when I craft, guys. I just, whatever I'm in the mood for, I suppose. Let me know. Let me know if you're consistent in how you do things or if you just do things differently every time. Yeah, this is what I'm doing on this one. At the time, I think I probably have a thought process. Maybe not. So this went really fast. I did speed this up, but it was a pretty fast process. Then I'm going to take the little clamps that I get at Dollar Tree and just hold this down so they don't move around until that dries and while I'm working on the bottom part. So I put a little bit of the hot glue down because I could work pretty fast putting these on. And it went pretty fast. I love this. This is probably my favorite roof that I did. And then once I get them all glued down on both sides, I did both sides, I took a little bit of that weathered wood and I just dabbed it on the edges. I used a stick to kind of keep me from getting it everywhere at first. And then I decided I didn't care if it got everywhere. I liked that kind of rustic look. So I ditched the stick and then just started dabbing it on the edges and across the top. And then I did dry brush it a little bit. Now I have these little wooden discs. I have no idea where I got them. They probably came in a package of something. I traced around it. You could paint it with weathered wood and glue it on there. If you didn't want to cut it out, that would be a different look. And then you could just do some Spanish moss on it. I'm going to take my, what is this thing? Sanding block, and sand it down a little bit. Give it a little bit look. Now, I wanted it to look a little bit like that German schmear. And so I took white swan and I just dabbed it over the bricks and a little bit in the mortar. And I think it turned out super duper cute. I'm so happy with this one. This may be my favorite one. And I'm just, same song, second verse, same as the first, gluing the Spanish moss. And then where I had sanded on this, you could see the milk box behind it a little bit. So I just took that weathered wood and dabbed it on. And then I just dabbed it all over in some places to bring it kind of all together so it didn't look like I just did it in one place or two places. And I think it turned out really cute. And now I'm just going to take a couple of little tiny sprigs of greenery that I had that I just pulled off of a little bush and going to put them down in there. I'm going to take a teeny little tiny just shoestring twine bow and put in there. Because, you know, birds, they just bring everything in when they nest. And so maybe this little bird brought some little leaves and some little twine and some little grass and some little pieces of everything. I was watching a live cam of a bird in a nesting box, and she brought, it looked like polyfill and cotton and strings, and she had everything in there. It was so cute. Now, I had these little, they're called erasers, and they were part of a package of spools that I purchased off Etsy, and I never knew what to do with them. And when I was looking through my stash trying to find something cute to put on here, I fell in love with this idea. I don't know why, I thought this was so cute. Let me know if you think they look cute on there or if they look dumb. I can take it. Give me your honest opinion. The last birdhouse is the tall, skinny one. I had this wood plank from Dollar Tree, and we're going to have it as the base and the porch. Now, I needed to cut it down a little bit, so I took it out to the shop and cut it with my miter saw. You could use one of those miter boxes or find some way to cut it. I had these little clothespins, and I had cut this off before for a project. We had cut that off and used the tops for baby Jesus in a project, and so I had all of those left over. And I'm going to show you how I cut them. So I have my little mini miter saw with this little tiny 2-inch blade. It is so precious. And so I clamp it down in here. I'm going to show you in just a little bit. I'll raise it up and show you. I'm going to clamp it down in there. And you have to push that little button to close it down all the way. And so I'll close it down without it on and make sure the blade is going to cut right where I want it to. And so I'm closing it down, tightening it down on my little clothespin. And then, see, I'm showing you I've got it all closed down on there. And then when I close it down, it shows me right where it is. I don't have it on yet. And I am so careful with this because I do not want to lose a finger. Okay, I can't close it down until I push that button. So now I'm going to turn it on. And now the blade is spinning. And I can't pull it down until I push that button. When I push that button, down it goes. See it popping out? There it goes. And now it's cut. Now I'm going to turn it off before I do anything else. and then I can loosen that up and pull those out. Now I have all my things ready to go. Now I'm going to use our layered chocolate. This is a darker brown, and I'm going to give it all one thin coat. I'm going to dab it on the ends first on all of them, and then I'm going to go back and just give it one coat, one thin coat of this on all of them and the wood plank. It's a dark chocolate brown, so it looks like it's really good coverage, but when you see them, you're going to see that I didn't really pay that much attention to get really good coverage, because I'm going to do a heavy, I'm going to use vintage linen and a chippy brush, and I'm going to give it one coat, one thin coat. I started out thinking I was going to dry brush it. Okay, so here I'm acting like I'm going to dry brush it, and I decided you could see too much of the brown through. So you're going to see when I did that and I got too much, I was like, yeah, that's the look I'm going for. So then I went heavy with it. And then I decided, why am I wasting all this paint and time doing the whole thing when only part of it's going to show? So then I went back and I did a light coat over every single one of those. And it really went pretty fast. I'm like, oh, that looks tedious. So here, you see how pretty these look? Oh, I'm in love with that. And then I just did a little dry brush over this. This is Apothecary. This is the one I did in Apothecary. And you can see I didn't even do full coverage. You can see a little bit of that weathered wood peeking through the Apothecary. And then I'm very lightly dry brushing a little. I'm taking cake batter and Queen Bee. Excuse me. And I'm just going to pounce it on there. And so it gets all in all the little nooks and crannies. While it's drying, I'm going to take cherry picked, and I'm going to pounce it in there and get it all in all those little details. And I'm going to dry them with my heat gun so that they dry a little faster down in all those little nooks and crannies. I'm going to take cake batter, and I'm going to just dry brush, do a heavy dry brush over the top so that the cake batter's on top and the Queen Bee is in all the details. I'm going to take some of this, that gold rub and buff, and do the center of it. And then I did do a little cake batter over it because it was a little too shiny for me. Now I'm taking the French millinery, I cannot say that. Y'all know what it is. And I'm going to do it over the cherry picked. And then I'm taking the silver pewter rub and buff, and I'm putting it on the center of this little medallion flower. And this is what they look like. I love these molds by DIY. These are probably my favorite ones that I use the most. I'm going to clear wax them, and then I'm going to do a little dark wax to outline the gold one. The yellow, gold, whatever you want to call it. Now this is where I'm going to place them. And now let's work on our roof for this one. Same thing. I'm doing a little bit of wood. It's not wood glue, it's Type Bond, quick and thick, and a little bit of hot glue. And we're just going to place them just like so. And right over that hole, I'm just using hot glue because there's nowhere to put the Type Bond. And it stays just fine with just the hot glue. I'm not sure why I used the Type Bond, but I just wanted to be sure. I don't want these little things to pop off. Now this one, I just put that across there, and then I went over to my little tiny saw, and I cut that little piece off and glued it right on top. I did the same thing on the other side. I did use those little clamps to hold it until it dried. And then I'm going to use a little bit of both glues to glue these little pieces down. Same thing for both pieces. And then I cut the hole the same way I did both of the other ones. Now, I saw someone use these cocoa liners, and I cannot remember who she was. I went back into my watch history, into my liked videos to try to find, I probably spent over an hour trying to find the video I watched of who used these instead of Spanish moss. I thought it was a brilliant idea. So if you have watched the video or you know who she is, please in the comments let me know, because I would love to give her credit for this great ingenious idea, because it works great. It looks good. It's just a different look. Now this is that wired jute from Dollar Tree, and I just wanted it to have a little different look than the other wire for a hanger. And like I said, the little brick the little brick one I didn't put a hanger on. And I don't think they even need hangers because we're not really hanging them. But, you know, birdhouses typically hang in a tree or whatever. I have some sitting on my back porch, but they don't have hangers on them. So anyway, I just thought this was a cute little hanger. And I couldn't get it to, you know, poke or stick into there because of the twine. So I just glued it in there. And I used my little Cricut tool to stick it in there. So let me know what you think about this one. It's a little different, but I thought it turned out really pretty. My little birds were kind of an afterthought. I picked them up at Dollar General for only $1 a piece, and I'm just going to use the clear wax, dark wax, and white wax on them. And so I'm going to use my little makeup brushes that work great with the waxes, and I'm going to give all of them a clear wax to start with because I don't want the other waxes to be as overpowering. It kind of waters them down. Then I'm going to take the white wax and I'm just going to use it as a highlighter. I just want to highlight, you know, her little head and the top feathers and the top of her tail and just, you know, all the pretty little places. And I'm going to take my little scrap of t-shirt and buff it out so it just stays down in the details. Now, these are not IOD, so the details are not as beautiful. But anywho, you can see the difference. The one on the top is the one I've used the waxes on, and the one on the bottom was the original. These two little birds came from Dollar General as well, and I'm going to paint this top part with Cowgirl Coral. I'm going to set it aside and let it dry. This is a custom mix paint with Prom Queen and Mermaid Tail, and I'm going to just pounce those colors on because this is a concrete, and it worked better that way. Now I'm going to paint both of them with Queen Bee for their beaks. I'm taking a beadboard and I'm going to just go in and paint all these little dots with that to match the bottom because I'm not going to paint the bottom. I used weathered wood and just dotted the little eyes. I'm going to use cake batter and white swan kind of mixed together to just make a very faint color on the bottom because I really like the concrete color on here, especially with that blue, the blue and the gray. But I did want her to look a little bit like that robin that we had in that other picture. And so I just dry brushed it on. And then I just took a little bit of that white swan on my brush and went all in the same direction, up and down. I didn't go sideways. I just went up and down and dry brushed her. And this is how they turned out. I think they turned out adorable, much better than that bright, shiny gold. I did clear wax them all as well. Okay, next DIY. I picked these two precious little birds up at Joann's probably that same day. Nope, not Joann's. This is Hobby Lobby. I didn't pay that price. They were 40% off. And then I have this little metal hoop decor piece. I think I got these at an online auction. They were gold, and I took them out and spray painted them. I spray painted them previously, but didn't end up using them, so I had them kind of in my stash already spray painted. And when I put them in those little holes, they will come up to the top. That's what I was trying to tell you there. But I'm going to take a little dark wax by DIY, and I'm going to use this makeup brush. It comes in a set of 5 or 6, I can't remember, and different sizes. And I love to apply my waxes with these brushes. They're also great for stenciling. I love to have them in my arsenal of brushes for crafting. So I'm just going to give this a good coat of the dark wax because the color it was just wasn't doing anything for me. And this is, it's a wood piece, but it's almost a little bit like bamboo. Now I'm going to take cake batter. and I've got a stenciling brush, and I'm just stippling a lot of this into the little nooks and crannies there because I want it to get down in there, and then I want to wipe a little bit of it back. So I just kept doing that all over these little birds until I got it to look like I wanted it to. Now they're kind of slick in nature, so you know, the paint didn't really stick really good, but I wasn't really looking for that. I was looking more for like a kind of a dry brush, kind of not. I didn't really want a full coverage on this, so I just wanted them to look kind of old and like the paint had kind of worn off a little bit. And I'm going to take the petticoat pink and I'm going to stipple a little bit where the flowers are on the breasts of the birds. And I don't really care if it's neat or messy. Because I want them to look like they're a little bit kind of old, I guess. Or like maybe that, you know, a little bit of the paint has worn off. And then I do take a little bit of aviary, and one of them had a little leaf on it. And so I just dabbed a little bit of aviary on where the leaves are. And I think these little birds turned out really cute. I ended up giving them a coat of clear wax by DIY to seal our DIY paint because it is clay based, and if you don't seal it, then it can be removed, you know, with moisture. So if you have some high humidity, you know, you could have some of your paint could come off. So let's wax these little babies and look how cute they are. I think they're just adorable. So let's get back to our little platform here. So I'm gonna just press those into the little openings that are provided. These came in a set. There were 3 in the box, and I only gave like maybe $5 for the 3 of them at this little online auction site. And I'm going to use a twist tie to hold it together. I'm going to take a piece of this little ribbon that I'm going to make a bow out of, and I'm just going to hot glue it around the top so that we don't see that little twist tie. And then I'm going to make a real simple bow. I'm trying to figure out what size I want it, and then I'm just going to roll it around itself. It's just a super simple bow. I made the inside loop a little bit smaller than the outside one, and then I'm making them all about the same, you know, folded in half where they're about the same. And then I'm taking a piece of twine and gathering it up in the center, pinching it together so it's gathered in the center, and I'm just going to tie a knot to hold that really tight. Now I want some long tails because I want them to drape down the sides of our little centerpiece, and so that's about how long I want it. Find in the center, and I'm going to pinch it together, and then I'm going to tie it on the back side. Now this was not a two-sided. You could kind of see through it, so you know, but there's a front and a back, so I had to make sure that I had the front side with my bow. Now I'm going to pull and twist and fluff it until it looks like I want it to, and then we will glue it on our centerpiece right on the top. Now this part's going to be a little difficult to record because it's tall and it's right up in the face of my camera, but I'm going to take these little sprigs of greenery that I have no idea where I got these. I've had them in my stash. I don't know if I ordered them from Amazon or if I got this at Hobby Lobby. I honestly just really don't remember where I got it, but I put a little piece on each side, and then I'm going to put my little birds. I did hot glue them down a little bit, put a little bit of Spanish moss on there, and it's just such an adorable little spring centerpiece for my table. I put a little piece of lavender and a little bit of greenery around there, and I just think it turned out adorable. You'll have to let me know what you think about this one. I had picked up these little aluminum birdhouses from Dollar Tree some time ago, and I just started painting one of them and decided I didn't want to that day. And so today I'm going to finish this project. So I'm just using my wire cutters on my needle nose pliers to take those little little stands off. Now I'm going to use some beadboard and some Saltwash. Saltwash is a paint additive that makes it thicker and will help you get texture. Now the difference in this and adding baking soda is that this is designed to work with paint, so it's a little more stabilized. So I'm going to just pounce it on. My paint was a little bit thin because it had gotten really thick in my jar, and I had watered it down a little bit some time ago. So I could have added a little more Saltwash to make it a little thicker, but I really was kind of digging the way that it was looking on here. So I just continued to apply the paint, dab it on, stipple it on, and just get the look that I wanted and get the coverage that I wanted. And I did not want to see any of that metal through. So I just kept dabbing it until I got it how I wanted it. So I'm going to have 2 white ones, and then that bigger one. Well, let's finish this one first. Okay. And I did it all the sides, the top, the back, because in this project piece, you are going to see the back side. So this one, I'm using faded burlap with Saltwash and doing this exact same method. So getting up underneath those little eaves and just stippling it all on and giving it some texture. And you're going to see in just a bit what I'm going to do to bring out those little flowers. But I did take those metal posts off of all of the birdhouses. You can see that now. I'm going to dry them with my heat gun so that the paint gets all nice and dry. And then I'm just going to take and dry brush that paint with the Saltwash and over that, and then you can see how the detail of that flower came out. And I'm going to do it mostly around the edges and just, give it a little secondary color on there. And then same with the faded burlap, I'm going to use the beadboard and do the same thing, just so it gives it some dimension and a little extra color. And then I'm going to take some weathered wood by DIY as well. I'm going to dry brush. It's just straight out of the jar, and I'm going to dry brush around the edges, just giving it, it's almost like, I like this look because I feel like it almost outlines your piece. So it gives it, a place for your eye to stop. And then I just did a little bit on that flower, but I did it a little heavier on the rooftop so that it looked a little different. Now I'm going to give all 3 of these, front, sides, back, all of it, a good coat of Big Top sealer to seal them. Now, I have these 3 little birds that we're going to use French Millinery and Prom Queen paint on. Now, I poured these previously with some leftover resin that I had when anytime I pour and I have leftover resin, I just go ahead and pour it in a mold instead of wasting it. So that's how these little birds came about. And here's the mold that I used. It's an IOD mold, and these little birds are precious. And that lip makes it so easy to pour that resin in there. Now you can make them with clay if you want. I prefer resin. I did buy a new kind of clay that I'm going to try that one of my sweet viewers told me about. And stay tuned because I do intend to try that soon. So 2 blue and 1 French Millinery. This is such a beautiful mauve, but when it dries, it's a light mauve. It's so pretty. And of course, I love Prom Queen because I love blue. It's my favorite color. I know everybody thinks purple's my favorite color because I have purple in my hair. I do love purple, but blue is my favorite, every shade of blue. And so I'm going to coat them with clear wax first because I want to do a little white wax on them. But if you put clear first, you can wipe the white back a little more and it won't be as stark and as heavy. So it almost is like it waters it down a little bit, if you will. So here I'm going to put white wax. Now I have a brush that I use white wax for, I have a brush that I use clear wax for, and a brush that I use dark wax for. So I'm not using the same brush for all the waxes. So I'm trying to get the wax down in the crevices. And then I'm just going to take a little paper towel and just lightly brush over the top because I want that wax to stay down in there. And you're going to see this finished product and how pretty they look when you get finished doing this. It brings out all the detail. The IOD stamps are so full of detail. I don't know how those girls do it, the IOD sisters, but I have ordered other molds. I'm calling them stamps. Oh my goodness. Okay, these are molds, not stamps. But the stamps are very detailed too. But I've used other molds and they're okay, but these are just far and above. But okay, I have this little block of wood I was going to use for another project. They were birdhouses as well, oddly enough. But my cousin had saved this for me from a project that she had at her house. And so we're going to use it for this one. Now I'm going to put these little birds over the holes. And the middle one had a really big hole. But not to worry, we're crafters. We can figure out how to fix that little problem. I'm going to take some Spanish moss and just fill the holes in. And just put the birds over the holes. And I don't even know if I did put Spanish moss on all of them. I sure did. So I'm just showing you, I'm just wadding it up and putting it over, putting some hot glue on there. And then I'm going to hot glue the birds to the house. One of them I actually used some Titebond Quick and Thick, but most of them I used hot glue. So I'm just going to put a big old wad of hot glue on this one because it had that Spanish moss it could adhere to. And this one had some Spanish moss it could adhere to as well at the bottom as well. But it looks like I just put it right to the birdhouse. Okay, so I did use the Titebond on this one. And maybe I was experimenting. I don't know the rhyme or reason why I do anything. Okay, so here they are. Now I'm going to use the Fix-All adhesive that I get at Dollar Tree. Love this stuff. It comes in a small little tube, so it doesn't get all janky before you use it all like E6000 does. And I'm just positioning these to see where I want them to be positioned on this little block of wood. This is a really heavy, solid block of wood, and I think it just is beautiful, natural like that. But I'm going to put the permanent glue on 3 sides and some hot glue on 1 side. So the hot glue will hold quickly while the permanent glue sets up. And then I can continue on with my work. So that's how it's going to look. Okay, so I put all 3 birdhouses on with the glue. Same thing for all 3 of them. And look how cute. But it just needed another little something. So I put this ribbon, just made a little simple bow. I got this ribbon and the ribbon that I used on the centerpiece at Sam's Club. If you haven't checked out Sam's Club seasonal ribbon, you are missing out. Right now for spring, they have the most beautiful, I just bought neutral ribbons, but they have the most beautiful ribbons for Easter. And they are like, in my Sam's, I don't know if regionally they are different prices, but they're $7.98 for this huge roll. And I have some that I've had for about 3 or 4 years that I've been using, and it's like it just keeps giving and giving. Okay, here's the finished product. Let me know what you think about these adorable little birdhouses, and leave a comment down below. Leave me a bird emoji and let me know what you think about these cute little spring decor pieces. I hope you enjoyed all those bird DIYs. Let me know down in the comments if it's your first time seeing them or if you've seen them before. Now let's get on with the bunny DIYs. Adorable bunny I got on sale at Savers for $3.99. And I knew when I saw it that I was going to do a 2-sided project with this adorable little lightweight wood bunny. This wood is so lightweight, and I just knew I could make it adorable. So I'm going to use a mold on it, and one of my sweet viewers suggested that I try this Hardy Soft clay because I don't necessarily love clay. I love to use resin. So she suggested this and that I might like it. So there's a learning curve for me on this. It's real spongy and it stays soft for a long time so that you're able to actually work with it, and there are a lot of benefits to that. But I mean, it took me a little while to figure it out. Like when I'm trying to scrape it back there with this IOD mold that has the little lip that you can just scrape it back, it was pulling out of the mold for me, and I had to keep pressing it back down in there. So I'm not sure what I was doing wrong, but I just kept pressing it down in there, and I like for the back of it to be really flat, so I kept trying to use my little scraper tool that I always use with my regular clay, and it just kept trying to pull it out of the mold. So I just worked with it a little bit, and I made it work. And then I left it in the mold to kind of dry, just out of convenience, not for any particular reason, just because I had other things to do. I decided to go ahead and start painting on our little bunny. So I just left it in there to dry. Then I grabbed Farm Fresh by DIY. I get all my DIY paints from Sammy, unicorndustdesigns.com. She sells IOD products, Saltwash, all kinds of wonderful products. Go over and check out her website. I'll have a link to it in the description box below, or you can just go over to www.unicorndustdesigns.com. Now, this is Farm Fresh. I love this color. It's one of my favorite colors that they have. And don't ask me why I painted these stripes the colors that I did and why I placed them where I did. It just happened the way it did. This French millinery, I love this too. I just can't say it. And it's a beautiful, beautiful purple. Now, then I took cake batter. Only skipped one row and then painted both. Then painted two in a row. No idea why. Just trying to be different, I guess. I don't know. This is just what struck me the night I was painting. And when I looked at it later, I was thinking, why did I paint those stripes the way that I did? Who knows? Okay, so while those dry, I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to do this decoupage. It's called tissue paper. Okay, let me tell you about this stuff. It is beautiful. It's amazing. It's very easy to work with, but it is not paper. It is more like fabric. It has a texture to it, and it has fibers in it. So this Mod Podge did not work with it like tissue paper or paper. I was going to try this method that everybody uses and just do a little bit, and I was really going to try to do it. I couldn't. I had to do my iron-on method like I always do. That is flawless. So you'll see me here. I do try to do it, and I just couldn't do it. But this is super thick. It's really like fabric, and it's almost kind of like a little bit of mesh too. So I went ahead and I just put a coat of Mod Podge on our bunny and let it dry completely. And then I ironed the paper down with my mini iron. As I mentioned in the intro, this video is a part of the Thrift Flip road trip hosted by the Crafting Cousins and Sammy Unicorn Dust Designs every other month. It is an open playlist. Anyone can join it that has a YouTube channel and loves to create. When we do thrift flips or just trash to treasure, makeover decors, anything that we can't, that's old and needs a makeover, and we make it beautiful again. In the description box below will be the playlist where you can watch all the amazing creators and all the thrift flips that we did for this thrift flip road trip. Okay, now that we have this all ironed on, I'm going to trim it down really close, and I thought I was going to do the burn off method. Well, you're going to see really quickly that that didn't work, because this almost, when I burned it, almost acted like it had a little plastic in it. It melted. So I just decided I was going to take this emery board nail file, which I would never use it on my nails. It's way too rough. And it just kind of ate it up because it's more like fabric, guys. I don't really know what this is. If you've used these before, you'll know what I'm talking about. So I took these tiny little fingernail scissors and I just went around the edge and cut it, and it turned out fine. That worked the best. And then in the little opening, I used my X-Acto knife and just laid it against the wood and cut it, and it worked fine. I tried to sand it a little bit more, and it really just worked fine to cut it. So this is what it looked like when it was finished. And now I'm going to clean up my mess with my little tabletop vacuum, which I absolutely love. Everyone should have one of those in their craft room. Now I'm going to make a little messy bow, and I'm going to use this beautiful crocheted lace ribbon I get at Dollar Tree, and this little chiffon lace I got on Shein, and it came 3 little rolls in a package for just $1 or so. And I'm just going to cut some little pieces that are all about the same length. I didn't even care if they were all the same length or not, because guess what? This is a messy bow. And I'm just seeing how many of those I need. Now, my sweet friend Brandy from Making It My Own DIYs brought me this little bow dabber because she heard me say that I had watched somebody use one and I thought it would be cool. So she brought me one on the cruise that she had gotten at the Goodwill bins. And so thank you, Brandy, because look how easy it was to make this adorable little bow. I'm looking forward to using it to make other bows as well. It just, you can make those bows, but that was just easy. Okay, back to our clay. It stayed very pliable. It still feels very almost wet. I'm going to adhere it with some Tite Bond Quick and Thick glue. And when I put it on, it makes it feel a little bit slimy. I was going to use some hot glue, but I was afraid it was going to melt it, because that's just kind of how it felt. And when I'm not familiar with it, I'm just going to use what I think will work. So I'm just going to lay it down on that because we're going to paint that with the Farm Fresh as well. And I just took my X-Acto knife and trimmed that off, and it does mold. I was able to press it down and mold it into the sides. That was a very nice feature that I was able to. It was still pliable enough to mold it into that. So that was nice. Now I'm going to take that Farm Fresh and a very small, well, I started out with that one. Okay, wait a minute. I have this little flower that's from that same mold that I had poured extra one time with some resin. And so I'm going to paint that with the Farm Fresh, and then I'm taking a smaller chippy brush and I'm just going to paint this whole row and blend it in with that original row that we had painted with the Farm Fresh earlier. Now, I was afraid when I was stippling this on that it was going to change the texture of this clay. So I was trying to be gentle, but I also want to stipple it into all the details. So this was definitely, like I said, there's a learning curve for me on this clay. Let me know if you've ever tried this airsoft, I think it's called Hardy Airsoft Clay. So I'm going to try to dry these up with my air gun, which I always do, my resin pieces, but I was afraid to, because I was afraid it was going to melt it, and it did change the texture of it a tiny bit, so I stopped. And so then I decided that the center of those little dots we needed a little contrast. So I took Crinoline by DIY and just put a little dot in the middle of those flowers, and then I put a little on my chippy brush and dry brushed just a wee little bit on the little planks that didn't have any color. And then with that chiffon lace, I made a little tiny bow and put it on there and put the little flower in the center. And then here's my little messy bow, and then I just cut another little strip to put in the center. And we're going to put it on that side. You can just see what I'm doing. I don't even need to talk. My voice is a little crackly because in Texas, our weather right now is so crazy. We had thunderstorms last night, and some places around had some, I hear some places had hail, and it was really chilly and windy today, and it has been in the upper 80s, or in the 80s, so yeah. Okay, I'm going to make a finger bow with this chiffon lace. This is so easy. Just wrap it around your fingers a couple times and then leave a long tail. I left a little tail when I started out, but I'm going to leave a long tail right here. You see my little tail there, and then I'm going to bring it around, and I'm going to poke it down in the middle right there. I'm going to bring it up into the middle, and then that little loop by my thumb, I'm going to go to my thumb, underneath it, pull it up toward my finger, my index finger, and as long as that, where the knot's going to be is right in the middle, put it right in the middle of those two fingers, and then pull really tight toward the bottom of the bow. Pull it off your fingers, and then you have the most adorable little finger bow. And that's how I made that little bow, and then I just glued that little flower to the center. And we have a two-sided bunny. So this is really 2 DIYs in one. For this little bunny DIY, we're going to start out with using a piece of this aluminum cookie sheet that I cut out using a felt bunny head from a garland that came from Dollar Tree. It's in a little pack that you can make your own garland. And I just took the little felt bunny head and traced it out and cut it out of the cookie sheet, the aluminum cookie sheet, just like the one you see I'm using to protect my table. Then I also decided to cut one out of just some thin cardboard that came out of a calendar. You know, the one that keeps it from getting all bent up. Then I'm going to glue my painted aluminum piece to the cardboard piece. Let me see if I can explain this. You can totally see what I'm doing. I don't even need to have words, but you know, I like to talk. Anyway, I painted that aluminum piece with one just messy coat of Old School by DIY. It's a chalk paint. It's a clay-based chalk paint. I'm just going to trim up those edges a little bit. Now, it's all dry, and I am going to do 2 coats of iron patina paint by Dixie Belle. This is my second coat, and while it is still wet, you want to use the Dixie Belle patina spray. I'm going to start with the green, and this nozzle gets a little clogged up sometimes, so I'll have to really clean it. And I also like to spritz it on a little bit. The blue, I like to spritz on the cookie sheet and either use a Q-tip or a paintbrush and dab it really thickly wherever I want it, because it doesn't spray out of my nozzle very good. If you get one and it sprays out your nozzle good, great. Now, this yellow looks like mustard, and if you get too much, it's not a good look. Just trust me. Ask me how I know. Okay, so see, I got a little bit much. So I'm just going to use a Q-tip so that I can use one end, and if I get a little too much, I can use the other end to kind of dry it off and move it around a little bit. Then I'm going to take my heat gun, because I love to use my heat gun to dry it, but it also kind of moves those colors around a little bit, that spray around a little bit, so that they don't just look like polka dots on there. Okay, now I don't know that I got on camera that I just put a little piece of twine around the bottom and put a bow on. That was simple. That was easy. And this is a very cute little sitter for our tier tray. I found this adorable little precious bunny at Dollar Tree all by itself. I couldn't find any more in the store anywhere. I wanted one because she had a little crack in her foot. I asked the gentleman at the store, and he said he didn't think there were any more in the store, so he gave me a discount. He gave me this little bunny for 25 cents. Can you believe it? So I'm going to paint this little bunny all over with 2 coats of apothecary. I'm going to do one with my brush like so. The second coat, I'm going to use one of these little sponge daubers, and I'm going to sponge all over because I love the texture that it gives. And I don't really want a lot of texture, so I'm not going to add salt wash or soda or anything like that to my paint. I just like the look of the texture that the sponge gives. So I did that all over. Now I'm going to take some clear wax by DIY with this little brush so I can get in all the little nooks and crannies and all the little spaces. And I'm just going to wipe a thin coat of the clear wax all over, because I'm going to go back in with some dark wax just in the cracks and the deep places. And I don't want that dark wax to be super dark, and I don't want it to get all over the place. So I'm going to take a smaller brush, and I'm going to just put that dark wax right down in those valleys and the low places, the cracks, all those places where it should be a little bit dark. And then I'm putting it in there, and then I'm kind of wiping the excess off, and so it makes like some shadows, and it just makes her look so adorable. This was one of the easiest DIYs that I did this week, but elevated her so much. And I don't even care that she has a little broken toe. It's okay. And she's going to be so beautiful sitting on my tiered tray. Here's the little felt bunny head that I referred to earlier. I should have done this DIY first, and then you would have already known. Well, I traced this out onto some old salvaged wood fence boards, and I took it over to my scroll saw, and I cut it out. Now, I sped this up super fast, but it really is just this easy with the scroll saw to cut things out. I love, love, love my scroll saw. And I can do it inside because there's a little vacuum underneath that my husband purchased for me along with it. So I can just put all those little crumbs that you see there. Here's the finished product. I'm going to use both pieces. And I can just scoot all those little crumbs in that little hole. There's a little vacuum underneath that sucks it all up. Okay, here it is. I'm going to take my little finger sander, and I'm going to sand around the edges to make them like get all the little fuzzies off. You know, when you saw something, there's always those little fuzzy pieces around the edge. And then I'm just going to sand the top of it. Now, this is what it looks like when I finish. I'm going to take vintage linen by DIY. I get all my DIY paints, Saltwash, IOD products from Sammy over at www.unicorndustdesigns.com. That website is linked in every one of my YouTube videos, so please go over and check out her website if you're interested in some of those products. She also has thrifted items, just a lot of wonderful things on her website. So I gave this a very light coat or a very heavy dry brush, whichever way you want to look at it, and then I took my finger sander and just sanded it a little bit. Now, I love that little crack in her ear up there, and you're going to see that in the other piece that I do that matches it. She's so cute on the tier tray. Just like I promised, we are going to use the other piece. We don't waste any scrap wood around this place. We are going to use some apothecary by DIY. This is a beautiful green, light green, not quite minty green. It's got a little bit more blue in it than mint. Then I'm going to take the vintage linen and go over that also, so it looks like it's got a couple of colors worn in there, and then just sand it very lightly. I'm using a very light hand with this just to take a little bit of that color back, and I did both sides. Now I'm going to glue down some twine, and I kind of messed up. I was going to use the Tite Bond Quick and Thick. Well, I am going to use the Tite Bond Quick and Thick. I put it up top because I thought I was going to wrap it around the top like that, but you can see I put it in the wrong place, but that's okay. No fear. We'll just put it down at the bottom. And I'm trying to use this a little bit as kind of holding it together just in case that crack decides to go ahead and split, which it doesn't look like it will, but you never know with scrap wood. So I'm just wrapping that around. So this is functional and decorative. So, and the wood was a little bit warped, so I had to use that Titebond to get it to really stick to the wood. So a little hot glue for a quick hold there as I put a little knot in it, and that's going to hold really nice. And then I'm just going to make a finger bow. Yep, see, it can stand up by itself. Then I thought about putting a little half wooden bead in the middle. Right there, do I show you? Did I show you? Yeah, thought about doing that because that looks really cute. But I remembered that I had this little tack that was on the end of a spindle from a chair. That was the part that sat on the floor. And I thought how nice this would look. So I just put it through there, poked it in the wood a little bit, got my little handy dandy chubby handled hammer out and tacked it in there. And look how precious this is. For our next DIY, another one of these Dollar Tree signs, and it already had a beautiful wood grain finish to it. And I picked up these napkins at Dollar General. The package was $1, and I'm only using one of those old napkins. I cut it out, I peeled it apart. I kind of sped this up too much. I didn't have time to tell you what I did, but I just peeled it apart where it was only one little layer of that napkin. And now I'm just going to dry brush so it looks a little whitewashed. I love that whitewashed look. You should know that if you've watched any of my videos. I love to whitewash. I love to dry brush. It just gives it some dimension. And I really wanted that napkin to pop on our surface. And so I like to take an old t-shirt, cut it up and use it for rags. And if you wipe that down, it gives your surface a nice smooth finish. Now a little Mod Podge. I buy Mod Podge by the gallon, and it lasts me a long time. It's much more economical to purchase it that way. And so I'm going to put this on here where I'm going to put my napkin, and a pretty decent coat so that it sticks good. And I like for it to go ahead and put enough where it's going to seep through. Now I have just a piece of plastic and my brayer tool, hope I'm saying that right, and it helps to smooth that out so nice without tearing that little thin napkin. And just gluing down my edges, glue that around there with a little Mod Podge and get the edges really nice and smooth. And then I'm going to put some Mod Podge on top. You have to be really gentle with that napkin. I waited until it completely dried to put the Mod Podge on top. So that way you're not putting wet on top of that, more wet on top of the wet napkin. So just a thin coat just to seal it. And it is so cute. That little bunny's so cute down there. So I cut this out on my Cricut and made a stencil. And I've got to clean up all my crumbs. Drives me crazy. And my Frisco transfer tape on there, and it wasn't quite long enough, so I used 2 pieces, and it works fine. I do it all the time, especially with stencils and if they're very big. And if you've seen these signs at Dollar Tree, you know they're really nice long signs, especially for that price. So just gonna press it all down on there and just peel it off if I can get my fingers around it. And sometimes if there are letters with an open, like an O or a C on there, I had a little trouble with the O and the C. Sometimes D's or something with an open spot, you have to kind of be careful, but just take your time. And then I just get it in there, center it the best I can, and scrape it down a little bit, peel that off. Look how wonderful that works. Oh my gosh, I love that transfer tape. Okay, they're not paying me to say that either. I just love it. Okay, now I'm going to peel the transfer tape back to reveal our stencil. You know I'm going to use that again. And then press it down, get it all pressed down nice and good. And then I'm going to use this Paint by Folk Art. I want to say it might be called Italian Sage. I'm not really sure. I wish I would have gone with a darker color, because you will see when I take this stencil off that it's not dark enough. But I fix it, because that's what we do when we DIY. I'm using this little sponge brush that came in a pack that I purchased at Michael's with a coupon and a gift card, and I'm just pouncing it up and down, up and down, up and down. And I didn't put this in my footage, but I always put a layer of Mod Podge and let it dry before I start painting, and it prevents bleeding underneath the stencil. Now I'm just taking off this stencil off my project very carefully. I'm too impatient. I like to peel it when it's wet. Sometimes I let it dry, but I like to peel it when it's wet because I like to see the results. So there we go. Get it all peeled off. And you can see that it wasn't dark enough. You couldn't see it good. So I took a really fine tip Sharpie, and I've already done every bunny. And I'm just going to show you a little bit. It was kind of hard because the surface is kind of bumpy from the wood grain. It's not real smooth. But I just kind of took my time and went around each letter with my fine tip Sharpie. And if I did it over again, I would use a darker color. But I think it turned out really good with that. Okay, now I've been using this all spring. I love this. I got this ribbon at Sam's on a big, huge roll. So I just cut 3 pieces, each piece a little shorter than the piece before. And I'm making a really simple little bow. Pinch it together, tie it with twine in the middle, and it makes a really cute bow. And just fluff it and twist it and fluff it till you get it like you want it. Hot glue it. I'm going to hot glue it to the top right above that bunny. And I think this thing turned out so cute. I absolutely love it. Every bunny welcome. Okay, third DIY, maybe my favorite. I picked these 2 little houses up at Dollar General for $1.50 each. And I just kind of disassembled them. Took the little door off so I could paint it. Took the little, you're supposed to hang a picture on that. Took it off. I've already painted that with my antique glaze. And now I'm going to paint this with that same green that I painted that other sign with. And I'm just going to give it a good coat. I think I only gave it 1 coat on each. No, I think I gave it 2 coats on each, the front and the sides, on each one of these. And now I'm going to do the roof tops, just the front and the edges, because the top we're going to put some faux metal on. And it wasn't quite dry because I'm impatient and just trying to be careful just to get that I wanted it a little bit darker so it would pop a little bit. I love contrast and texture. So there they are, finished, and now I'm going to put some of this floral foam I got at Dollar Tree down in the bottom of this little crate that I had already done with that antique wax. And I picked up these adorable little bunny picks. I wish I would have gotten more, but I really didn't know what I was going to do with them, so I only got 1 package. And I'm really not throwing stuff in the floor. I have a trash can over there. And I'm going to take the little bows off their necks, rip it off, tried to rip it off, it wouldn't come off. So I used a pair of scissors, cut the bows off the neck. The bows weren't horrible, but they just didn't match. And I used that same ribbon I used on that sign earlier and just made some little bows. I just cut a little piece off and pinched it in the middle and put a piece of twine around it. And I think they look really cute. I think these little bunnies are really cute for Dollar Tree. For something you can get at Dollar Tree, and 2 of them in a package at that. So they're really cute little picks. And then I decided those carrots you see up there, I'm going to make some picks out of them too. So they came several in a package. I don't even remember. I got those last year. There were a bunch in a package. When I got them, they were $1, but still at $1.25, it's a good buy if you can find them. So I cut my skewers down, and I'm just poking them. There's styrofoam in the middle. I'm just poking them up in there. Now, here's my Dollar Tree baking sheet that I've used so many of these, cut them up. Charmin over at Fixin' To taught me how to use these for everything. So I'm going to see how long I need it, how wide I need it. They bend real easy. They have these dots, so you just follow the dots to make a straight line. And then I'm going to use this little, well, first I'm going to cut it to fit. But I just use something that I've tried several different things, and I finally found something that I like to smooth it out. You could leave it rough if you wanted to, but I just have the side of this little tool, and that's not even the lid that came on it. I don't even know where that came from, but just something you could use the side of a big marker or something, just smooth it out on both sides. And then I'm going to glue these on, and then I realize I have not painted the back, and that is going to probably show, maybe not show. So I'm just going to paint the top part of that house and give it one little coat, just so if you can, well, you will be able to see it a little bit, and then that'll be good. I don't even have to paint all the way down because that will be glued to our crate. But I'm a little extra, so you know, I paint almost all of it. So get those two little things painted. Houses are all painted. Now we're going to make a little bit of, well, guess what we call shiplap now, but on the outside of the house, we just call it some wood grain, like it would be the grain of the wood. Maybe they did call it shiplap. Oh, got a little bit of my fingernail in there. So I did both of those, and then I got a tiny little paintbrush, and I thought I was going to use this antique wax, and I did the first one. I used a popsicle stick because my ruler was too big. I usually use my ruler, and I didn't really like I didn't really like how it turned out. So I ended up using, I didn't even show that. I ended up using Truffle by Waverly. And then I have my sanding block, and I just gave it a quick little sand. I used that sanding block from Dollar Tree, but I put fresh sandpaper around it when it wears out because that's pretty economical. Now I take my Antique and Glaze by Folk Art and just a little bit dry brush around the edges and right on those lines, just so it looks like a little old house. Then I glue the little black door right back on there in the middle because I think that's cute and gives it some character. Adorable. And then I'm going to glue those little metal pieces we made for the roof. Just glue it right on there using my little rubber silicone finger because that metal gets hot when you put that hot glue under there. So get that all nice and smooth down. Oh, those little houses are so cute. Okay, now I'm going to glue it to the side of our little crate. Super easy. This is a super easy craft, y'all. And it's so cute when it's finished. It's probably, I have it on my bar for Easter decoration, but I think you could leave it up all spring. I don't think it has to be Easter. I think we think of bunnies and carrots for Easter. I think of it as spring because Easter to me is all about Jesus and the resurrection, the death and resurrection of Jesus. So I think about bunnies and carrots and new life of vegetation, new life and flowers and butterflies being spring. So I'm probably going to leave this up all spring until 4th of July or whatever our next season is that we're going to decorate for. So just getting these carrots, poking those skewers. Okay, that one broke because the styrofoam broke. I just hot glued it back together, stuck it in there because it's going to be at the bottom of there, and you couldn't even tell. Actually, you couldn't even tell that it had been broken. So I got all my little carrots in there, got my bunnies in there, and then I have this little chalkboard sign from Dollar Tree. I think it's from Dollar Tree. I think they come in a package. If not, I know they have something similar. Put that little welcome sign in there, and then I'm still using this bag of grass that I've had for several years. And I get this stuff after the season when it's on clearance so that I can get the nicer stuff. Yeah, just poking it in there till it looks like how I like it. And just pick it up, wad it in, poke it in, put it where you like it, however much or however little you like. And oh my goodness, so cute. Tell me what you think.
Thank you, friends, for watching all the way to the end of this video. Be sure and leave me a comment down in the comment section below. You know I like to know you are here and to chat with you down there. But most of all, I want you to remember to be still and know that He is God.